Hi guys, this is V Harper from supermarcy.com and welcome back to another review. Today I'm going to be talking about Die Hard With A Vengeance, directed by John McTiernan and starring Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson and Jeremy Irons. This is the first Die Hard movie I ever saw. The order went Die Hard With A Vengeance, Die Hard and Die Hard 2. And yet I was not confused by any of them. That's one of the greatest parts about the Die Hard movies. Even though they feature the exact same character and they have references to previous movies, I still feel you can watch any Die Hard film and still be perfectly grounded within the time. You don't feel confused about the continuity or what the character of John McClane has done and whatnot, even though it does kind of help, because, you know, John McClane is he is the hero of the Die Hard story. And what makes John McClane so endearing, well, unless we're talking about Die Hard 5, and in that case, let's not, is the fact that John McClane is the everyman. Yes, he is a New York police officer and he has qualifications and training when it comes to dealing with crises, but at the same time, when you compare Bruce Willis up against Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Chuck Norris, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Steven Seagal, he still has that quality that you can somewhat see within yourself. Even though I'm a female. But the fact of the matter is, even though John McClane is a badass, he knows how to shoot a gun, and he knows how to outrun enormous explosions, he is still a human being. He is still a thinking, feeling, and, may I also say, a hugely compassionate individual. In the second film, Die Hard 2, he tries unsuccessfully to save a plane from being blown up by a bunch of terrorists. And even though he didn't know any of these people on this plane, you see him break down in the snow and grieve for his failure. He has let like hundreds of people die and he wasn't able to do a single thing about it. John McClane is still a human. He is not some sort of killing machine. He doesn't go around just firing guns willy-nilly. He has the characteristic of survival in his corner. And when it comes to human relatability and finding yourself in this enormously ridiculous situation that just becomes more and more dangerous, you tend to rely on your survival instincts. Well, I personally would not go out there all guns firing. That's just not my way, because that's how you get yourself killed. So, after all of that, Die Hard With A Vengeance is perhaps still my favourite in the trilogy. Well, we should say there are like 5 movies, but I don't usually include the 5th one because that one sucked. But in the quadrilogy, shall we say, Die Hard With A Vengeance still remains my favourite. And that's not to put down the first movie. The first movie is a classic, and for very good reason. But with Die Hard With A Vengeance, I just feel it has a little more oomph to it. Another great thing about most of the Die Hard films is that there is a sense of timelessness, specifically with the first 3 movies. You have a skyscraper, you have an airport, you have an entire city being held hostage, and you just need that basic ingredient in order to make a movie work. Now, with Die Hard 4, a lot of it was more based on, techno-terrorism, and that's completely relevant to this day and age. But with Die Hard With A Vengeance, this is essentially a chase movie. This is a movie about a race against time. There is not a single moment of stillness in Die Hard With A Vengeance, and that is primarily thanks to the fact that the director of the first movie, McTiernan, came back with Bruce Willis, and they still had that charm, they still had that fire going on. Now, even though the space between the first and the third movies weren't too big, you would still expect that a returning director and the returning star would perhaps find themselves at a crossroads, perhaps. Not so with Die Hard With A Vengeance. Die Hard took place on a skyscraper in one night. Die Hard With A Vengeance took place in an entire city within one day. With one long day, and John McClane is suffering a tremendous hangover most of the time. And that's another cool thing I really like about the movie. John McClane is not feeling 100% when the movie starts, and you could argue he never really reaches like 100% towards the end of the movie, because he is constantly found himself being jerked around and abused, and he's just going through hell. But with him, he has Samuel L. Jackson, who plays Zeus, who is a Harlem businessman. And the first meeting in this movie is one for the books. You see, Simon, the mad bomber, he is basically, pulling out all these demands on the New York Police Department. So he specifies that John McClane goes into Harlem and wearing a sandwich board that reads, and I quote, I'm not making this up by the way, "I hate niggers." So this film is off to an incendiary start here, especially when it comes to the fact that the co-lead character is an African American. Now you have to understand, Die Hard with a Vengeance was made 1 year after the beating of Rodney King and the LA riots. And for those of you who weren't around during that time, that was one of the biggest transitionary periods. And it's just a really, really tragic experience. And I don't want to go too far into it because, one, I don't know quite enough. I only have a very general knowledge about what happened. And two, I don't remember that much because I was quite young back in the day. But this whole experience shaped and shifted, racial tensions and clash of culture and everything like that. So Die Hard with a Vengeance, in a sense, became a commentary on this. You have a white American cop with African American everyday man, and you would think that after what had happened, neither class would really sort of, come into contact with each other voluntarily, which brings them to, and what brings them together is a mutual catastrophe. Okay, this isn't just regulated to like one particular part of the culture. This is regulated to everybody who lives in the city. Everybody is under threat by this mad bomber, and which brings me to Jeremy Irons. Holy Toledo, for the longest time, I actually called him Scar, because I had seen The Lion King, in 1994, and I didn't actually see Die Hard 3 until, 1997, so that sort of, that time shift somewhat changed my perception. But my good golly gosh, even though Alan Rickman was amazing as Hans Gruber, once again, not taking anything away from the first movie, Simon Gruber is just like his brother. Only, I would argue that he doesn't have as much class, but the fact of the matter is, he isn't trying to be Alan Rickman. This is Jeremy Irons under the very potent direction of Jen McTiernan, and he's just giving his all into this villainous performance. There is no subtlety with Simon. He is just having the time of his life. And even though the subtitle of Die Hard 3, With a Vengeance, is like a reference to perhaps, Simon and how he feels towards the fact that John killed his brother at the end of Die Hard 1. He's actually doing it because he wants some money, okay? He's a greedy, greedy bastard. Even though he does say that, he is somewhat doing it for the matter of the family, but this is still for Simon. Simon does what Simon wants, basically. And this entire movie really does rest on the shoulders of these three actors. And that they all do so damn well. And of course, that's what brings us to the action. Die Hard with a Vengeance still holds up amazingly, incredibly well in the action department. Remember when I said earlier that this film had a sense of timelessness about it? Well, explosions and car chases never ever get old. And all of them are done just so wonderfully. This was before CGI was really starting to, be explored. This was still a very sort of, a process in its infancy. So to this point, stunts, pyrotechnics, miniatures, this was all done on set. This was done by human hands and performed by human bodies. And my golly god gracious, this is what this movie does. It makes me tongue-tied with the sheer spectacle of it. I love it. And there's never a dull moment. When John McClane isn't, driving around and being chased and having massive shootouts, he is running back and forth with Samuel L. Jackson trying to meet the demands and solve the riddles that Simon Gruber puts out. It is just, it's explosive. That's pretty much what this entire movie is. It is an explosive exercise in fantastic action, and I never get tired of watching it. I think I could watch this movie on a desert island and still find glory in it. Now, that's probably not entirely true, but the fact of the matter is, Die Hard with a Vengeance is still a fantastic movie. It's packed full of action, it's got a lot of humour, there are so many fantastic quotable lines in this movie. One of my favourites, once again, being the initial meeting between Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis in Harlem. When one of the neighbours notice that John McClane is wearing the sandwich board, he says, "What the fuck?" That scene never fails to get me, and once again Bruce Willis is being his usual charming self, and he's just so sarcastic and he's so mean to the terrorists and everything. You almost feel sorry for them, because John McClane does not hold back when he doesn't like you, okay? He is not one to hide his cards when it comes to letting you know exactly what he thinks about you. It is just so amazing. And Samuel L. Jackson plays off him so wonderfully. Their chemistry is what truly makes this movie work. If John McClane was stuck with just another, blank slate of type of character, it would not have worked. It would not have had the same impact and the same charm and the same colourfulness about it. It's just a perfect partnership. This is one of those films of which the stars really did align to make a wonderful product. And that's what Die Hard with a Vengeance is. Is it perfect? No. What's perfection? But with a movie that has its aims so strongly in mind, that is what works about it. It knows what it is. It knows what it has to do, and it does it. So damn good. So I give Die Hard with a Vengeance a 4.5 out of 5. I don't want to piss anybody off by saying that it is, shall we say, superior over Die Hard, because we know that's not the case. And with its minor imperfections aside when it comes to plot holes and whatnot, and, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna say Die Hard with a Vengeance is a bloody good time. And even though I may personally feel that it has that little edge over the first Die Hard movie, they're still on par with me. Die Hard with a Vengeance is one of those sequels that, if not, it is on par, it is superior. But in this case, it's on the level. Die Hard 1, Die Hard 3, on the level. And that was Storm. Okay guys, thank you so much for listening to me ramble, and I shall see you in the next video. And once again, thank you for joining me for this movie exchange between myself and AJ Akari. Bye bye for now.